Hello, welcome back to Sharks Happen. My name is Hal, I'm your host, going over shark attacks from the 1900s till present, mostly large sharks. And we're going to get started over off of Miramar in Cuba, Havana, Cuba. The date is August 25th, 1931. Pablo Medina is 23 years old, and he and some friends had gone to the beach. His friends all say that he was the first to enter the water. They all were going swimming, and by the time he got himself about a quarter mile off ashore, he started screaming for help. His friends swam out to him, and they found him with the shark still attached to him. They don't say if it was a leg. It's probably a leg, but they don't say where it was attached. But the shark wasn't letting go, still trying to drag him under. So the kids helped him. When they got there, the shark let go. They're taking him into shore. When they got into the shallows, when they're able to walk with them, the shark made one more attack, and by the time they got Pablo into the hospital, he ended up dying from his wounds. So he passed away in the hospital after the attack. Brave of the friends to go out and get him. It doesn't sound like too large of a shark, probably, you know, a 5-6 footer, maybe a little bit larger than that. But, you know, for a shark not to be able to drag you under when you're out in the middle of the water, I don't know what size that shark would be. But the attack seemed pretty brutal, enough to be a fatality. I wish I knew the size of it, because this one seems like it might be smaller than the 6-foot cutoff of our show. And we'll get into those attacks as far as fatalities by those small sharks at the end of the show. So that's our story of Pablo Medina, an attack and an attempt to predate. We just don't know what size or what kind of shark. Okay, now we're going to head over off of the coast of Florida, off Sanibel Island. The date is October 4th, 1986. Florez is 6 years old. She is walking between her parents. The mother and her fiance are on the outsides of them, and they're walking into shore. It's about 6 o'clock at night, and they're in 3 feet deep water, about 6 feet from shore, when one of them steps on something. They don't know what they stepped on, but right after that, they felt a tug on Luz. They felt something was pulling on Luz. They must have been holding her hand, walking her in, and they thought, first the mom thought that it was a dolphin, and then one of the other kids that were on the beach yelled, "It's a shark." The mom reached down in the water, hitting the shark, trying to open up the shark's mouth, while other beachgoers came over and grabbed the shark, probably by the tail, and dragged it off of the girl. They got the shark off, they got her in. She had a crushing injury from her hip to her knee, with some wounds to her shin. So it sounds like it bit her a couple times, but it had her by her thigh. You know, she's in 3 feet of water, so to the girl, she's probably up to her chest for a 6-year-old, and they couldn't even see what it was when it first had her, so I'm thinking visibility probably was pretty poor. They said it was a lemon shark, about 5 to 8 feet long, and that they felt that it was sick, and that's why it wouldn't let go. I kind of think the same thing. We've seen this with lemon sharks before. I don't know it's sick necessarily, other than maybe at a point where it hasn't fed in a long time and it's not successful in feeding and it needs something. I think that happens a lot with these smaller sharks, to where they're just going to grab on and they can't let go because that's the last thing that they think they're going to get. But who knows? You know, it could be just these lemons are you know, I guess stubborn. They don't want to stop when they start. They don't want to let go. Because I do hear about them clamping on and not letting go, and people having to pull them off more than other sharks, I would think. So the only time I've heard of a really bad injury from a lemon so far was that spear fisherman who had his arm bitten, and, you know, it severed his arm between the elbow and the hand. But that's the only one that I've heard of to where it actually severed something. She had avulsed muscles and nerves, and it did some pretty good damage to her leg, but luckily they were able to get it off of her and get her in. We're going to put it down as an attack and an attempt to predate. We're not sure what size, 5 to 8 feet. They did identify this shark by shark teeth. I mentioned that, I think, in comments, that I don't see a lot of bull and tiger shark teeth like I see a lot of white shark teeth, or like gray nurse, the ragged-tooth sharks with the little pointy sharks. Those teeth end up in wounds a lot when they bite people because they seem a lot more fragile. But I don't know about these tiger and bull teeth, how often they get them. I'm starting to pay attention to that, but I don't see it much. That's our attack on Florez, and we'll move on. Okay, now we're going to head over to Destin in Florida. So we're staying in Florida, going over to Destin. The date on this attack, April 2nd, 2017. Caitlyn Taylor is 17 years old, and she is out in the water. Doesn't say how far from shore. She's in waist deep water at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. She's standing there, and she's actually at the second sandbar, so she's probably pretty far off the shore, but she's in the waist deep water because she's right by a sandbar. She looks out of the wave that's coming in, and in the wave there's what she thinks is a dolphin, probably hoping it's a dolphin. Well, it turns out it's a shark, and by the time she can tell it's a shark, probably seeing its mouth open now close to her, it's pretty much on top of her. She gets grabbed by both legs, so this shark comes in on a wave and snatches her in both legs, and she immediately turns and starts beating on this shark. She said she hit it about 6 or 7 times, and it finally let go. She gets helped into the beach, and she had to be sutured up. She had abrasions and cuts, lacerations from the teeth. Doesn't look like it shook, and doesn't look like it, you know, elongated the cuts at all. I'll post a link to this attack, ESPN story on Caitlyn. That'll have a picture of the wounds after they're treated, but not before their scars. So you'll be able to see the wounds as they're pretty fresh after they did them up. But you'll be able to see it's hard to tell which way that, you know, it was grabbed, but it looks like a pretty wide bite mark. This is a 5-foot shark that ended up grabbing her, the witnesses say. So we're not going to cover it. If I was to cover this, if it was a 6-foot shark, we'd put it down as an attack and an attempt to predate because she had to beat on it so much to get it to let go. We don't know what kind of shark it is. I would think that, you know, it could be a bull, it could be a sandbar. There's all kinds of sharks this could be. I don't think it was a ragged tooth shark because it looks like there were teeth that sliced when you look at the leg. It doesn't look like just little holes. So I think it was a shark with actual, you know, knife-like teeth. And I would put it down as an attempt to predate, but we're not going to cover this like that. And these smaller sharks, they come in on these waves. It's just crazy. Large sharks like to come in on waves too. You hear about this a lot more than I ever thought they did. They must enjoy it. They must enjoy having the assist of the wave, but that's an awful frightening thing. That's like watching that video of that surfer that has 2 great whites come at him on his board. One of them gets him in the arm. We're going to cover this guy coming up. Not today, but we'll get to him in the future. But that's a crazy attack to have 2 great whites in waves, in the curls of the waves. That's the scariest thing. Well, not the scariest thing. The scariest thing is to be in that water with them. But that's our attack on Caitlyn. An attack, we're not going to cover it as far as anything else. Would put it down as an attempt to predate. But wanted to go over this one because, you know, these sharks in the curls. I also wanted to get into that. Some viewers had brought up, you know, do you think they overestimate the size of these sharks? I think absolutely. I not only think that, I've seen scientific evidence of it. They did a study. They took and put like a 5-foot or a 7-foot. This is in either Baldrich's book, Great White Shark book, or I don't think it's a Mammoth book, but it's in one of those 3. And I think it's in Baldrich's book where they took test subjects. They had 2 sharks in a tank. So these are clear tanks. This isn't like you're looking at the water of the ocean. These are clear water tanks. So you can actually see the sharks. So they have 2 sharks swimming in this water. They have the test subjects line up, and they let them see the tank. So they let them view the tank for 10 seconds. And then they stop the view and they ask them how big those sharks are. Most of them overestimated the sharks. You know, little sharks, 5-7 footers, they had them a foot bigger than they're supposed to be. So every time I go into these, it depends on who it is. You know, divers are pretty good at estimating distance as far as shark, I would think, to the shark's tail because they know how deep water is. They're looking down at it all the time. When you're on top of the water, when you're in 12 foot of water, you know where that bottom looks. Well, I think they could see that same depth perception on a tail. Surfers also, surfers and boaters, fishermen, they all have something that they can compare that shark size to. The people on the boards have the boards, and the people in the boats have the boats. So those people, I take those kind of witness testimony a little more seriously than just the average person saying, oh, well, I saw, you know, most of the shark, it looked like it was 15 foot. Could have been 13. Could have been 17, but usually they're going to go higher, and that was proven by that study. So that's our story of Caitlyn Taylor, and we will move on. Okay, now we're going to head over to Pialba Beach, which is in Hervey Bay, Queensland, Australia. The date is December 5th, 1922. Alfred Gassman, he is 19 years old, and he is out doing some swimming. It's 9:15 in the morning, and he is out about 60 yards from shore. He's in 4 feet deep water when he is attacked by a shark. actually, his uncle had seen a shark and yelled at everybody to get out of the water. So they all sprinted to get out of the water. And when Alfred got about 60 yards from shore, he was grabbed by the shark. They all heard his screams. They went out to help him. They got him into shore, got him into the bathhouse, but 15 minutes afterwards, he had passed away. He had very traumatic bites to his side. It had taken and removed most of the right flank, including a huge bite that went from the lower rib cage, including the hip, just removed all of that. So a big chunk missing. Up above that, there was a bunch of big avulsions of skin and probably bone, and he couldn't survive the wounds. The shark swam around. It's a 9-foot, like blue in parentheses I've seen, in quotations I've seen, a 9-foot blue shark, and when it's a blue shark over in Australia, in quotation marks, that is a Mako. 9-foot Mako sat there and just kept swimming around the area the whole time. For about 15 minutes afterwards, they made attempts to catch the shark, to kill it, but they weren't able to catch it. So the shark got himself away, and Alfred Gassman ended up passing away from his wounds. We're going to put it down as an attack and an attempt to predate. It did a pretty good job of doing, you know, as much of it as it could before they even got out to him. They were all probably nearby him when they were all making their way out of the water, so it probably didn't take long for them to get to him. Just like that other Mako that followed that guy in with that weaving head to side where it was trailing his bait fish or his fish back on his line. This shark hung around, and that's a strange thing about these sharks when they're swimming like that. There was divers in the water where a shark was doing that side to side before it attacked. You know, that crazy erratic side to side. I don't know what type of shark. I just came across this story the other day. But the thing was, is the shark wouldn't do that movement until somebody got behind it. So these divers were probably all in the water with it, like that oceanic white tip. And every time somebody would get behind the shark, it would start taking its head and going like that. So there's some things out there that aggravate these sharks. Who knows what happened there? It sounds like it wanted to eat him, and that's how we're going to put that down. Alfred Gassman, 19, an attack, a fatality, and an attempt to predate. Okay, now we're going to head over to Ka'au Beach Park, which is in Oahu, Hawaii. The date, November 5th, 1992. Aaron Romento, he is out doing some boogie boarding with a friend. He's out about 50 feet from shore at 9:45 in the morning, and it's very shallow water. Him and his friend are paddling to shore when they see 4 turtles go swimming in between them. So they go right in between them and they go swimming on their way. And right after that, Aaron's bit in the leg. A shark comes up, bites him in the leg, and goes on his way. Some reports are that it was bit 3 times in the leg. I've seen other reports that it was just 1 bite in the leg, and the coroner's report also says 1 bite in the leg, 1 big bite. Those other reports say that there was no flesh removed. When there was most of the soft tissue was removed from his leg. He got himself to the beach. They made a towel tourniquet on him to try to stop the bleeding, but by the time the paramedics got there, he was unresponsive, and he died from hypovolemic shock. So he was gone pretty much probably when he was bitten by the shark out there. Turns out it was about a 9 to 10 foot tiger shark. You know, they love to come up and just bite and take a piece and go on their way, and that's exactly what happened here. We just went over one that seemed similar. The guy was paddling out from some ramp in the morning before some big competition was going to happen, and he was bit quite in the same way, which was interesting because that's where they used the DNA to find out that it was a 14.3 foot tiger shark, and that it was a 17-inch bite radius that was on, well, actually diameter on the board. So something with 17 inches bit that board, but this one was a 10-footer that bit him 9 or 10 feet. Tiger shark, we're going to put it down as an attack, not an attempt to predate. And it seems like the shark just took what it could get. You know, I know it knows it wasn't a turtle. It just took a piece of his leg and went on its way. It ended up getting a meal, so that was it. Attack, not an attempt to predate. Unfortunately, a fatality. Okay, we're going to finish out the show, which you don't hear that every day. But before we do, we are going to get into some stats that I think prove that mistaken identity really does not happen very often. I don't know with how many sharks it does, but these stats are from all sharks. This is we don't have enough to go through, and we'll get into investigations currently and the problems with them to where we're not going to get the information we need. But we'll get into that shortly. We're going to talk about H. David Baldrige and his work looking into the Shark Research Council, which was headed by Ralph Collier. He would take his information and comb through it, analyze it, the same stuff we're going to be doing here. I mean, we're just collecting it right now. We're going through it. I'm putting it on video so that you can see the attacks, but eventually I'm going to be combing through this and picking out things that I am seeing that are common with these, and we'll try to see if we can't find out a way that maybe will save somebody from being attacked somewhere. But that's what this should be about as far as attacks. But we're going to get into the H. David Baldrige. He went in over 531, I believe it was, 530 so attacks that they had on record back in 1970 when he looked at this. It was 70 or 68. Navy stopped funding in 68, and he was the curator of the shark attack file until they stopped funding. So he went through it all, and he noticed that there was 161. So most of the time these sharks are not seen before they hit. And this is all sharks, this is not just great whites. The sharks are not seen before they attack in most cases, but when they are, there's 161 he had that he could review the statistics on them. And here's the numbers for this 161 attacks where the shark is seen. 66 times straight at the person, and 22 of those 66, the shark is passing people close by, so close that it's either bumping them or they can feel it go by. This is 66 attacks out of 161. They see it make a beeline for one person. 33 attacks, they see it circle. So it does the classic circle the person and then bites. I don't think any of those are mistaken ID, and we're at 199 out of 161, so a vast majority already. There's no way these are mistaken ID. They ain't passing up other people going biting other people thinking they're seals. These are swimmers on a beach usually. It's not like, and they do it to divers too. Why are they picking out one seal and leaving the other seals alone? I know everybody says that they can pick out weakness and everything. I'm not too into that they can pick out a certain weakness. I just think they pick somebody out and that's it. But so we're at 99 attacks. Now we're at 25 attacks. Well, we'll start with 11 or more attacks where the shark is seen. This is the classic drone footage attack. The shark is seen somewhat behind the person at the surface of the water or near the surface, and then it submerges and goes and attacks. That's 11 times. So now we're at 110 attacks. 110 attacks, 66 straight at them, 33 circle. 11, they were watching them and submerged and went up and hit them. That's 110 attacks. I don't think any of them are mistaken identity out of 161 where they're seen. 25 times, the shark does nothing out of the ordinary. It doesn't act erratic. It doesn't do a beeline. It just is swimming along and just bites the person. And this one reminds me 100% of Heather Boswell. That shark was in no hurry to do anything it was doing at that time. It already bit a man in the thigh before it went after her. But even when it got her, it never acted, you know, it's thrashed its tail and stuff when it decided it was going to attack and try to take her leg, which it did. But before that, it didn't act like anything other than a calm orca. Is all I can explain, especially when you see the footage that I don't even know if it's around anymore, but where they show that shark go down to her foot. So it looks like a big orca down at her foot, where you see like SeaWorld and you see that whale go down to the foot and you can't really see it bite it, but you know that it's got it because it's dragging her under. Well, that's what that did to Heather Boswell before it bit her on the thigh. It bit her on the foot first. So that's 135 attacks out of 161. I don't think any of those are mistaken identity, none. I think that those where they're not acting out of the ordinary, where they just bite, those are test bites. Those are the classic test bites people talk about. So that's what I give to those. So that's 25 more, 135. 14 times the shark was stuck between a person and a barrier. So the shark was between a person and a sandbar, a person and a beach. So the shark is stuck between the person and the beach and it ends up biting. I don't think that's mistaken identity. I think that's territorial. I think it felt it had to do it just to get out to the open sea. So those ones could be non-attack, you know, not the usual, hey, the shark wants to attack. It ends up attacking thinking it's trapped, I think. So those 14, we can put them aside as not normal attacks, but I wouldn't say they're mistaken identity either. So now we're at 150 attacks. Out of 161, I don't see any of them that are mistaken identity as far as the actions of the shark. I'm going by what the shark does, not by what it's thinking. You got 8 more attacks where the shark acts erratic. It's moving its head side to side, and I had just gone over an attack on some divers, I guess it was, because they were with some shark. I don't know what kind of shark it was. I didn't really get into the thing. I just saw that the shark was moving erratic, and I saw that they said that it did it every time somebody got behind the shark. So it could have been like the Brothers Island deal with the oceanic white tips that I posted, where everybody's around it, and as soon as somebody gets behind the shark, it starts moving its head side to side, like they talked about that Mako back during the spear fisherman dragging his fish back to shore with them, and the Mako just stayed behind the fish, wagging its head back and forth. It acted like that 8 times. Those still are not mistaken identity. That's 159 of 161 attacks where the shark was seen beforehand. You tell me which ones of those are mistaken identity, and that's all sharks. That ain't just our whites that are more intelligent than I think any shark out there. That's every shark. And I don't see in these actions of the sharks where they're seeing this happen as far as mistaken identity. So we're going to hold on right there, and we're going to get into a couple points that viewers brought up. A couple viewers had stolen my thunder on this earlier this week. Right after my last show, I get on there to look at the comments, and I'm seeing my next commentaries on there. The first one I want to bring up, a few people had brought up, is with the drone footage. They look at the drone footage, I look at the drone footage. How many times do you have to see a shark sitting there looking at people before you realize that that's not out of the norm, that is the norm? Because you got these people that are watching these drones. I've had them on here complaining to me about how I'm wrong, how I'm making things up. But they sit there and watch. How many times do they have to watch a shark seeing somebody in the water before they realize this is what they do? They're not acting differently when you don't see them. And that's the same with these attacks, where 159 of 161, to me, show that none of them are mistaken identity. Yet, the majority of the attacks the shark's not seen, they act differently the rest of the time. I don't buy into that. I think that's the way they act. I think that when you're seeing these videos, you're seeing pre-attack behavior. Every video you're watching of a white sitting there, that white is sitting there deciding, do I want to go ahead and submerge and take one of these people out, or try to eat one of these people, or just bite them, get them out of my water? He's sitting there deciding whether he wants to do that in every one of those videos. So those 11 cases where the people were seeing the shark behind them on top of the water, looking at them before it submerges, that's exactly what these drones are picking up. Now, it's showing you, the drones are actually showing you what we've all been told, that that I believed. I didn't need a drone to tell me that sharks are seeing us all the time. Sharks live in the water. Did you think that a large shark hasn't seen people diving, surfing, swimming, boating, whatever, kite surfing? These sharks have seen it. I don't believe that they go around, they bite somebody, they wake up the next day, and they can't remember the rest of their life beforehand. I'm not part of that group. I don't believe that when you sit there and watch every great white looking at these people and nothing happening, that they're not doing that when something happens. But somehow, everybody can watch these drone footage and think that it proves the opposite, that they're not the way that they are, that they don't do what I say they're doing, that they don't attack people. Well, yes, they do. They just don't do it as often as you think. Here, the drone footage, people seem to have viewers that think that sharks see somebody and goes and bites them. That is such a ridiculous notion to me. Even when I started looking into this, I knew how rare it was, and I knew people were seen by sharks. I had seen reports of sharks being around people. People dove with sharks back then. You can't have it both ways, drone people. You cannot have it to where the shark is nice and calm and smart and intelligent, and people are swimming with them, people are diving with them, and not just the white. We're talking every shark. People are out diving with oceanic white tips, bulls, tigers. They dive with them all. You can't dive with a non-intelligent fish. And let me get to the no-hands people, because they bother me probably the most. Where are these sharks using their mouths to be curious when people are diving with them, when people are out swimming, when people are around sharks that aren't biting them? The only time they're curious is when they're doing their attack to you. It's like, are you serious? I mean, if they're curious, then why aren't they biting all these divers? How could you dive with something that's curious? It has no hands, going to check with its mouth. They're not checking then? Why all this hoops and bending and twisting? And now I'm going to get to the the major problem in all this stuff. When I started this, I had one conversation in March of 2021, and it turned out that I found out that people didn't know sharks wanted to eat people, didn't know that they would eat people, or that they would spit them out. I heard they would spit them out if they ate a person, and I was like, this is wrong. This is not what I know about sharks. I'm going to do a little show and see what I can do about finding out what's going on. And man, it's worse than I thought. This is like, I would say, global warming science when you get into this. Marine biology, here we go. My favorites, the marine biologists. Some rude people, let me tell you, because they get to do their work, you know, get their monies from the people, but they keep their work in private. They'll put out whatever they can here and there, but you never get to see what they do. Yet I had, I don't know how many retired ones, at least 2 or 3. One of them I had to ban. He was just an idiot, but a marine biologist, he says, and he's got to get all in my stuff because I'm on here doing it out in front of people so people can see it. I think that's as rude as can be, to have your whole career behind closed doors and then attack somebody that's doing this stuff out in the open where everybody can go ahead and check on what I'm doing. We couldn't do that with you. So that annoys me, but we're going to get into marine biologists. I went through some numbers. I heard 18% fatality rate in shark attacks, and overall shark attacks. Now, I do complain that they put all sharks together, and we're going to get into that right now. You go ahead and you say 18%, fine. What I see is 4,948 attacks. 1,206 of those attacks are fatal. This is by Shark Attack World's data, I guess it is. Those are unprovoked attacks, 4,948, and fatalities, 1,206. It's 25%. That's the overall. For all attacks on record, 1 in 4 die. No matter what kind of shark, 1 in 4 bites, it's a fatality on record. So that 18%, I'm going to say okay to that, because if you go 1900 forward, it's probably 18%. And if you go closer to modern times, it's probably even lower, because as advances are in technology and in medicine especially, things are getting better for people that are attacked by sharks. That, back in the day, back in the 1800s especially, I went through the first half of the 1800s. The attack started 1817. By 1850, 3/4 of the attacks are fatal. And it tells me 2 things. Number one, you know, healthcare couldn't deal with that. Number 2 is they weren't recording small bites. People had to have been getting the small bites out in Florida, out in the places they do, and they're not in the files. So there's got to be a lot more attacks than are even in the files, even if you go back to 1800. So I would say that if you go overall sharks, it's probably about 15%, somewhere around there. It's probably lower than the 18% they have if you had all the attacks that happened that nobody was killed from back in the 1800s and into more modern times. It seems that the attacks blew up at around 1970 or so, 1980. It's like they started taking more time to grab every attack that they had. So we're missing a lot of attacks. I would say that brings down the fatality rate to 15%, but that's all sharks. That ain't the large sharks we're dealing with. Now, 1,206, this is the problem I have with these marine biologists, why I say, where is the science? It's like the beef in the Wendy's commercials. Where's the science, marine biologists, shark experts? Where is your science when you have 1,206 fatalities? Two by any sharks less than 6 feet. One is a 4-footer that was out in the open ocean. I don't count that as a unprovoked attack to where a shark sees you on the beach and goes after you. You're out in the water, you're stuck there, fine. 4-foot shark took that person. The other 4-foot attack that would be counted as a fatality happened in 1850. And I can't find any information on the story or on the source. There's just the line in the thing, so I'm not counting it as an actual attack. I don't see that as, there's bogus stuff back in 1850. One of them is a Lake Nicaragua attack. I'm not questioning the person was attacked. I'm questioning that they were attacked by a shark. But I've seen these before, and I've had problems with this whole, I think that's associated with GSAF, but we'll get into that in a second. But anyway, if you got 1,206 fatalities and you got 2 by any sharks under 4 feet, when you have only 3 species that have killed more than 9 people. So only 3 species of sharks, the big 3, are responsible for double-digit deaths if you don't count shipwrecks. Why are you counting everything else? Why are you throwing in everything else when somebody's been killed? Especially when somebody's been eaten, like, what was it, Nellist. Simon Nellis gets eaten, and you're going to throw around dogfish stats. You're going to throw in stats for sharks that never kill anybody and water that down. You know, we're at 56%. That's where we're sitting right now. If you go onto my website, sharkshappen.com, I got to get the sheet updated, but I have 2 sheets up there now, and you can just click the download. You don't have to sign up. You don't have to do anything. Go to sharkshappen.com, scroll down. There's 2 clicks to download. One of them is going to be my spreadsheet that's going to have all the information that I can find, and I'm continuously updating it. So yeah, there's going to be some things that might be missing right now. I am still going through that all the time. It's going to be a continuous process. The second is an analytics, a quick analytic of that spreadsheet. It tells you the percentage of overall deaths, which is at 56%. So if you're bitten by a shark over 6 feet, by our show right now, you have a 56% chance of dying, which is less than 1 in 2. It wants to eat you 40% of the time. So that's our numbers on the overall sharks. I got great whites separated, and we've got 93, I think it is, great white attacks. Great white's been a little bit better on people, 42% fatality, 41 or 42% fatality rate right now on what we've gone over, and about a 32% rate of wanting to eat you. And that 32% rate of wanting to eat you matches up with the ISAF that says the great whites multiple bites are 33 or a third of the time. Hardly rare. I went through and I was looking at some of these. I come across this one thing, an attack, and a guy's sitting there and he says, sharks that bite more than once are extremely rare. We need to stop using the word rare altogether. You know what's rare is a shark eating a live manatee. That is what I call rare. It almost doesn't happen. How do we call something that happens 100 times a year, every year, rare? That's a frequent occurrence to me. That's something that is going to happen. It's inevitable. By the numbers, it's going to happen. I don't know. I don't see it as rare like they like to say. And to call a 33% time of sharks wanting to eat you extremely rare is absurd. It's almost criminal what they're doing, to throwing all this stuff they're doing, water and everything down. When you have 1,206 fatalities and you can only find 2 smaller than 6 feet, why are you bringing up every species of sharks there is? There's over 500, yet 3 will kill you double digits at a time, and I think only about 4 or 5 others have ever killed anybody. It's not like these sharks all attack people. Most of them don't, so for you to throw them in there, it's worse than if a lion scientist threw in meerkats with this stuff, because that's what you're doing. You're throwing in the meerkats, the kittens, the house cats, all into your lion stats and telling everybody what the final overall statistics are. Whatever happened to species being different? I mean, you don't look at tigers and then put lions with them. You don't put cheetahs with tigers or lions, and they separate them. But get into shark world, get into this global warming science world of sharks, and that's what they're all doing. I'd love to have at some of them. So now we're going to get into another problem, the GSAF. I've had issues with this site. I've had issues with their investigators. The closer we get to them now, the less names we get, less info we get, more ridiculous info I don't need I get, wasting my time. So what bothered me is over the weekend I kind of looked into the ISAF again to see if I wanted to just join up and look at it. They have it to academics and media. They're not going to let me in. There's no way they're going to let me in. So they have me cut off from that by using the academic thing. That's how they created the whole big gap between the rich and the poor. It wasn't done by anybody other than people saying, for you to push a button on this computer at this place, you need to have a degree. That's where that came from. Don't think it came from anywhere else. So we have the GSAF, and I'm going through that one. And I had a problem right off the bat when you look at their mission statement. Their mission statement is to let others be aware of shark attacks like in comparison to their everyday lives. Like shark attacks are no big deal as much as everything else they have to deal with in their life. It makes no sense to me. The problem I have here is that thing is headed by none other, and since 2010, where it's having all these problems, Ralph Collier. And I had my issues with some things I came across. Somebody said that he had, one of the attacks I went over claimed that he says the great whites do not attack at night. And now I'm wondering if he actually did say that, because there's no way that my boy H. David Baldrige would take up a job at a conservancy place like that and then just allow what's going on to happen. And I hold him responsible for it all. It's embarrassing, Ralph. You got to be kidding me. I go over an attack recently, and his investigators is either the investigators aren't doing their job, or the GSAF isn't putting all their investigations in. I think it's the first, because we're going to get into that in a second. But you can't have this where you're not giving us any information. Why do I want barometric pressure, dew point at an attack? I want water temperature. I don't care about air temperature, about dew point, about pressure. I want the water temperature. Where the hell is that? None of them are putting that in there anymore. So I can't, you know, we need to get back to doing attack studies, to studying attacks, to have a purpose, to try to find out what we can do to minimize them. And the way that they're collecting information, not getting the important stuff, is not helping. So why are you doing it? Why are you covering attacks? And I have this issue with other channels. I was a subscriber to a channel that actually investigates things, and I came across, I think it was 2 attacks, and I had issues with attacks before. One of the attacks we went over recently, 2021 on Honolulu Bay. Tiger shark bit that guy. I just brought that up, that the guy was paddling out from that ramp and got bit in the leg. Well, you read the GSAF report and you find out, oh yeah, it was bit in the leg, and it was a tiger shark, and it was 14.3 feet. Well, there's a chunk out of the board in their picture, but they don't tell you how big that chunk is. They don't tell you there was a 17-inch diameter bite into that board. It's easy to find. I found it. I mean, I told you guys about it. They don't tell you it was a DNA test that brought up. They don't tell you anything. Why would you not put that stuff in there? A 12-inch bite out of the board, a 17-inch wide bite mark to the board, and then that it was DNA to the mucus that was on the bite, not even teeth that brought this up. So that's new. That's information. That's something an investigator should do. And you're an investigator, you don't bring that up? I have to go searching around for it? I know not to use your site. I know I check your stuff to see what excuse you're going to make in your environment section for every excuse, for every attack, and I love reading the ones where the people disappear when they're out diving, because I'll tell you what, according to the GSAF, we ought to employ these sharks as recoveries, because they seem to find these drowning victims every time. Drowning victim found eating shark bites to him, and the GSAF is every time, unless somebody saw it, is going to say, well, we don't know that it happened first. So to see that, you know, you have these reports, some of them are telling me that, you know, where somebody works, what they do for a living, why they're at home because of COVID at the time, who's going to be doing the cooking because somebody's got to, I don't need all that. I need to know the distance from shore, the depth, the time, the temperature of the water, the name. I need to be able to check into this stuff. You see what I'm saying? You don't put names in it. How are you supposed to check up on anything? And I go through these attacks all the time in a whole list, and I'm telling you, there's more missing names now than there ever was back in the day. Because back in the day, in the 1900s, you'd have these people, oh, somebody over in some faraway country, and they just put their name. And one they put it, there was a black fisherman, the one that was bit when he had the net, and he was by the sandbar, and it grabbed him by the shoulder and pulled him into the water before it bit off his head. That one, it says male. There's no reason they say male now. Why are you hiding their names? Right to privacy when you're bitten on a public beach makes no sense to me. I mean, what are you doing, GSAF? Give me some names. How are we even supposed to check on these things? I mean, I know how to check on them. I've already figured out how to get that right information. And I've been burnt by your site. Back when I started the show, I thought I could trust that site. And I got burnt on a couple early ones. And I'll go over now on a couple ending segments. Folks are telling me that the bridge, the guy who fell off the bridge, that's a hoax. And a lot of these, I search them all in my news archives to try to find what they are and put that out there for you, what I find. Well, I couldn't find anything in the archives on that, but I didn't look into it further, and I should have. I mean, when I'm going off of that site especially. But it's not the only time that's happened. I ended a show with an attack where the father and son were hanging onto the boat in Santa Barbara Channel, and the sharks were biting on them, Harvey or I can't remember the name, but the sharks had at them. Well, in every story I read, most of them from my archives, from news archives, they all said that the boat capsized. The only one that says that something different happened, I didn't even bring it up. It was the GSAF report that said that the boat exploded. What? If you're going to steal an attack from a Jaws movie, make it the good Jaws movie. Don't take something from 2, 3, or I don't even like to say 4, but don't take any of those crap stories. I mean, blowing up a boat, are you kidding me? That'd be news. So that wasn't in anything I could find. And I also had one that I was just going to do where they have it on their site that the attack says that the guy was riding on the gunwale of a boat. So back in the 1900s, he was on the edge of the boat as they were taking this little dinghy out to the bigger boat, and he was bitten in half by a shark. Well, I go through all my reports on that. All the news says on that is that, you know, the whole boat capsized. The whole boat sunk. He wasn't the only one that went in the water. They all went in the water. So I got people that I'm sure I've seen them. They read from that site. And the GSAF, they, you know, they leave stuff out. They put other stuff in. They're the same site, James Oatley. I'll never forget James's name, and I still want to talk to this guy. You're over in UK. If you're there, email me, sharkshappen@gmail.com. I need to talk to you because, you know, this GSAF went ahead and copied your whole report that was in my Mammoth book, and they left out everything about the teeth. They left out that you had blood going down your leg. They just said that you had shots and went home. So I'd like to talk to you, but this GSAF is just garbage. Marine biology has no science. Until they separate, the closest thing there is to science is the ISAF separating great whites from everything else. It seems they keep great white statistics separate. I'm going to have all three once we get into it. The bull, the great white, and the tiger, and that's why I want my water temperatures. I want to see a break point in what they're in. But anyway, enough about that. I wanted to get in and show you where I'm coming from as far as I'm starting to not think that this mistaken identity happens at all with any large sharks. And that is my point of view now. We're going to head over to Sydney, Australia. Back in 1902, there was a gentleman that was out. What is his name? John Ogler. He was 31 years old, and he was out, and he was on a steamer. And the steamer was going down the river and going into the opening of a bay over in Sydney. And the story says he was might have been grabbed by his foot and pulled off. I don't think so. Some of the people said he was sitting on a rail. I think he fell overboard. They found his body a day or two later, and he was just torn apart. All that was left of him was his pelvis, his spinal cord, and his back. Everything else was eaten away. Everything inside of the ribs was eaten away. So he was totally skeletonized, and it seems like he had some of the skin on his back left, and that was it. But I have a ton of these, and like I was talking about with these older attacks, a lot of them are from ships, people falling off the ships. I don't think they were covering attacks back in the day like they are now, nowhere near it. So people brought that up. How many attacks are we missing? Maybe more than we have. I wouldn't be surprised if it's more attacks than the 4,948 we have. So that's our show for today. I wanted to go over everything that we were supposed to go over. The stats are going to hold off for a while until we get into things a little bit better, but I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a heads up. Marine biologists are out there all the time talking how you know, these sharks don't want to bite you. It's an accident. They don't have hands. They use their mouth. Yeah, well, they don't do it to most divers, or that wouldn't be happening, would it? It's just funny how they twist and turn to try to come up with something. And then the funniest is claiming that what normally happens doesn't happen when they don't want it to happen. Like the sharks sitting there looking at the people on the boards, looking at the people in the water. That happens all the time. Those attacks, that's happening during those attacks. I have no doubt of it. Great white is attacking you. It's already seen you. And I think the only time people bring up murky water, and I got to look back into these, but I think that a murky water attack from a great white would be, from a large great white, would be that light, gentle test bite. It's like they're already on you, and now they're going to see what they want to do with you. So I think that's why those might be gentle when they're in the water like that, is maybe the visibility is so low the shark can't really tell what you are until it's on you, and then it decides, well, we'll check and see. And sometimes it goes ahead with the attack, and most of the time it doesn't in those cases. So that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you'll be back in a couple more days. We'll go over some more attacks. I got plenty of them to go. I was shocked at how many fatalities I have on my stack, but now that I finally went through and saw that 1 out of 4 are a fatality, that explains it, because we don't have little sharks. We have large sharks we're dealing with, 6 feet and over, and it looks like that 6-foot cutoff was perfect, because I can't find anything under it other than those 2 4-footers, and one was open ocean, and the other one I can't find anything to back it up. So that's our show. But always remember, if you're going into that water, you are much more afraid of those sharks than they are of you.